My college life as an undergraduate was about as different as possible from my life as a grad student. Undergrad, I attended TCU as a business freshman with a business management major. My granddad and my dad were both in the supermarket business, and that was under the family name, and it only seemed natural that I would carry on that family tradition. So with that laying before me, my priorities in college were twofold. First, have fun, and second, get an education. My priorities were backwards. The summer before my senior year, I had to go to summer school to make sure I had enough credits to graduate on time in the 4 years, because my dad thought that 4 years of partying was enough for me. So after graduation, I went to work for my dad, and I settled into that role. A few years later, I knew again that God was calling me to something else, but I wasn't sure what that would be. So for the next few years, God patiently led me to where He wanted me to be, and I enrolled in grad school. The consequences of too much fun at TCU came back to bite me there. I entered grad school on probation. I had 1 semester to prove myself, but this time it was different. This time God was involved, and He was calling me to be full-time for Him. I got the priorities right this time. I worked hard. I learned everything that I could. I felt like a sponge soaking everything up. I loved it. My grades reflected that love. Everything I thought about doing academically as an undergraduate, actually did in grad school. I was a different student with different priorities and a different motivation. It was an amazing time in my life. In many ways, understanding our roles as a husband and a wife can be very similar to college versus grad school. So college, let's look at that as the time that you spent growing up in your family home. That's where you first learned about roles. That was your first definition of a husband and a wife. And so most of us, we grew up with gaps in this education. We entered grad school or our marriage with more to learn. To do what I do today as a marriage counselor and leading also marriage, I ended up with 2 master's degrees and 2 doctorates. I spent a lot of years in grad school. As you enter the grad school of role models, plan to stay a lifetime. Don't let that frustrate you. I've discovered that I will always be working on my role as a husband to Nancy. Some of that is because I can be a slow learner in some areas. And the rest is because people and needs can change over time. In many ways, what Nancy needs from me today is different what she needed from me a few years ago. Today, we're not raising a family. We're finished with that season. We've got more time for each other. Knowing that her love language is quality time, it gives me an opportunity to focus on quality time with her without some of the distractions that I had in the past. Whatever your family of origin looked like, you're responsible for your marriage and your family today. Your role as a husband or a wife is yours to define and learn with God's guidance. I've never counseled a person who didn't want to be the spouse that God designed them to be. They see the value, but they just need a roadmap to get there. So let's look at some ideas. First, make 2 lists relating to your family of origin. On one list, write down everything you valued in your family that you think God would have you bring forward into your marriage. On the other list, write down everything from your family of origin that you think God would have you leave behind. Then use these lists as checkpoints as you seek to improve your roles in your marriage. Second, work together on role goals for each of you as a husband and a wife. Support each other in the process. Pray for each other. Third, and this will be an evolving process, so update your list every year. For example, one year you may have more time for you to pray and say the Bible together than you had in the past. So use that, and then next year maybe something else. And as you succeed in things, celebrate that. We all have a choice. We can repeat the bad patterns we saw in our family of origin or the couples, or we can do things differently. You got a choice. And it's a big one, a really big one. What are you going to choose?